ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the shop here at the Armored Outdoors channel. Now, it is an absolute mess in here. I'm in the middle of a lot of projects, as always, and haven't cleaned it in a while. What can I say? Now, one of the questions I see asked a lot, and where this video is heading, is kind of the financial aspects of knife making. You know, how can I start a business selling knives? How many knives do I have to sell? What's your overhead? How much does it cost to make a knife? What do you sell the knives for? And all of those questions regarding the financial aspects in knife making. Now, a lot of people are really hesitant to answer that question, and I'm not really sure why. I think maybe because they like to change their prices. They change their price based on how they feel about that knife in a particular manner. I'm not really sure why, but I have a pretty set pricing guide that I'll include in the description on this video so everyone can see exactly what I charge for the work that I do. And let's just make a video kind of going through all the financial aspects of knife making. Now, a question I see a lot is, how many knives do I have to sell to make a business? And they kind of are looking for a specific number, a magic number. Well, there is no magic number for X amount of knives equals this much money in your paycheck. I, for one, am not a business. I don't make knives as a business trying to sustain myself. As just a kind of a spoiler, I think that would be really, really difficult to do. Not that it can't be done, because people definitely do it, and you could do it. I don't. I'm a hobbyist. This is my weekend enjoyment for me. I love coming to the shop. I love making knives. It's what I like doing. It's how I like to spend my free time. By far, my favorite hobby. I got a lot of hobbies. I do. Probably too many. I have a jack of all trades, master of none here. But knife making is one that I've been doing for a really long time, and it's something I always come back to. Now, so getting back to that question, though, of how many knives do I have to make in order to be profitable, your first step is to make some knives. Make some knives. Find out your process, because your process is going to be different than my process, and my process is going to be different than some guy who's making them to be like on a production line. I'm not a production line. I don't really think about streamlining. That's not something I want to think about. I think it would take a lot of the fun out of my favorite hobby. But so you need to start off making 5, 6, 10 knives. And then keep really good track on how much time it takes you and how much money you're spending to actually get to that end product. And the different materials you're going to use, the different tools you're using, all come into play when you're trying to factor out how much that knife is going to end up costing you. The question I also get asked a lot is, how do you figure out the price of a knife? And that is a really hard thing to do, because in me, for my knives, I like to try and get $20 an hour. That's kind of what I think my time is worth in the shop. I'm not willing to take less. I'm not willing to sell one of my knives, something I put my heart and soul into, for less than $20 an hour. That's kind of what it takes for me to pry that knife away from my possession. And you've got to figure out what that price is for you. And here's the problem that comes into your dollars per hour, your hourly rate, is that a professional knife maker, somebody who makes super good quality knives, and not that your knives may not be super good quality, I'm not saying that, but somebody who makes a really quality knife professionally for a full-time gig might have this process really streamlined, and he can pump out a really nice knife in 2 hours. Is that knife a lesser quality than your knife? That took you to make a similar knife for, let's say it took you 10 hours to make that knife. Is your knife lesser than their knife, even though they spent 2 hours on it and you spent 10? No. The knife might be better, might be the same. Who knows? Do they get a charge less for that knife because it took them less time to make it? They don't. So this gets really complicated on how to price out your own knife. I don't know. It's a very personal thing. You've got to figure out how much your time is worth, how fast you can make a knife, how much you're spending on to make the knife, and then a big thing is your popularity, your audience, how you are getting people to come to you to buy the knives. Family and friends might pay more, might pay less. I don't. It's there's so many factors going into that question on how to price your knives. It's a hard one to say, and there's no one way to do it. There's no. I'm telling you, I can tell you that when I first started making knives, 10 years ago, I was selling like pretty cool knives for 50, $75. Those same knives, not the same knives because obviously my skills have increased significantly. But a similar knife now that I make takes me less time and is better quality, and I charge a lot more. I know I charge like $250 for that knife that I used to charge $75 for. So, how to price your knife is it's a tough one. It's a tough question. You got to figure out what makes you happy. That's in the end, it comes down to what's a price that makes you happy, makes the customer happy, and if both parties are happy, then that's the fair price of the knife. So I have here a itemized list of everything that goes into making one of my knives. In fact, this knife right here, my classic drop point hunter, timeless design, great utility knife, excellent knife to have on your belt when you're in the woods. And it's been a good seller for me, and it's something I've made a few times now. It's a very classic design. People recognize it. People like it. And when it's got that handmade touch, kind of just elevates what's on your hip out there. It lets you stand out from a crowd. Now, what does it cost me to make that knife? I'm going to say total cost, $78. $78 for me to make a simple 5-inch hunting knife. And granted, that does include shipping. And shipping is going up in price. So it cost me $78. And I'm going to go through, I don't know how boring that'll be, you can just skip ahead. I'm going to now tell you exactly what everything costs. So the steel, I use 1084, I buy bar stock, $15. The handle wood material on that particular one, it had some nice black walnut. $15 for the handle scales. My sanding belts on my sander, I've got a 2x72 right here, and I use the cheap belts. They're only $2 a belt, but those cheap belts don't last particularly long. So I use about 3 belts per knife, and that comes to $6. My sanding paper to finish the handle and do the other random tasks that you have to use sandpaper for, about $1. Now this next one, I kind of just grouped a bunch of miscellaneous stuff into it, but it's $5, and that's your epoxy, your pins, the propane, the stain, the shop rags, WD-40, your etching vinyl and your transfer paper, your cutoff wheels for your Dremel and for your angle grinder, all that stuff I'm just conglomerated into about $5 for knife. And then that is the actual knife construction point. Now this next part is all of the shipping costs. And shipping costs are not cheap. So I have to buy a cardboard box. I've got to the point where I don't have cardboard boxes on hand for the amount of knives I'm shipping out. So my cardboard box costs me just a hair over $1. It's like $1.20. I put $1 on here. Shipping it ranges from like $12 to $20. I just shipped to California. It was $12, and then I just shipped to Florida. It was $22 to ship to Florida. I thought it was kind of crazy. Anyways, and then I ship my knives insured because if anything happens, I want to have all that covered. So insurance is usually about $5, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little bit less. And then if I'm just including a leather sheath because most people buy a knife with a leather sheath, is $8 for the leather, and then around $1 or $2 for all of the hardware on the leather. So total material costs, again, $78. So that knife, right now, I charge $250 for the base knife, and then another $35 for the leather sheath. So that is shipped to your door, $285 for that knife. That leaves me with a total profit of $207. $207 in my pocket. Not bad. How long does it take me to get that $207? It takes me about 6 hours to make a knife. It ranges on the knife and the complexity of it, of course. So I'm going to average out 6 hours to make that knife. It takes me, and that's not including tempering, by the way. But I'm not really working during the tempering process, but I'll usually do 2 1-hour cycles. So if you really want, you could add in 2 more hours. But I don't, because I'm not working. It's just in the oven. So 6 hours to make the knife. 2 hours to make a leather sheath. I'm not particularly fast at making leather, and Honestly, I really enjoy making the knives, the leather sheaths. I'm decent at it. I put my time into it, but it's not definitely something I love. Anyways, it takes me 2 hours to make a leather sheath. And then all of my knives I ship in a presentation box, which I just literally use like 1x6 hobby board, and I'll just make a quick knife for shipping and presentation. It's cool. It looks nice. Kind of elevates it when you open up your cardboard box, and inside is like this really cool wooden box. You can open that and there's your knife. It's just a nice touch. Anyways, that cost me $6 to make the wooden box, which I put on their presentation box, $6. So that is in there. Anyways, it takes me about an hour to make the presentation box, package it up, enter in all the information, and get a shipping label. Print out the shipping label. So, 9 hours. That's where all that went. 9 hours for my profit of $207. What does that leave me per hour? About $23 an hour, which for you, now this is all highly dependent. Can you live off of $23 an hour? I couldn't. Not supporting my family, $23 an hour just wouldn't cut it. Not at all. Could you live off of $23 an hour? I don't know. Maybe. You got to figure out if that's good enough for you, if that's better than flipping burgers for 15, but here in Oregon, flipping burgers is $15 an hour. This is definitely a lot more fun than flipping burgers, so, it could be a viable option for you. And that's, again, this is with, I make 1 to 2 knives a month. I don't have the orders to do this full time. I couldn't do it in an 8-hour day, 5 days a week, and produce the knives. Not that many people are buying my knives. I'm a relatively small channel, pretty unknown. I don't get that many orders. So I couldn't do this full time, even if I wanted. I just don't have the demand to meet that. And now, again, this comes to also your cost of equipment, your overhead. Now, again, this is a hobby for me, so I don't really count my overhead. This is a shop that was attached to my property, to the house that I bought, so I didn't pay for this shop. I paid for the shop when I bought the property, but it's not something I'm having to pay a monthly fee for, to have the roof over my head, to house all my equipment. And the cost of my equipment, thousands. But this has been accumulated over a decade. All my tools. When I find a good deal at a tool, and I generally go like estate sales and garage sales is where I buy my tools. But the only new tool I even bought, pretty much, was the knife grinder, and it's okay. I'm not in love with it. It's got some tracking issues for me, but it definitely speeds up the process. It makes the knife making job a lot more enjoyable, for sure. So for me, this is not a money-making hobby. This is a hobby that essentially allows me to do my hobby and have it free. It's a hobby that pays for itself, which I am super grateful for. I absolutely love it. I'd be making knives whether they sold or not. In fact, I would love to keep every single knife that I make because I love making knives. I love knives. I would love to have all my knives I've ever made, hung up on the wall. That would be sweet. But selling them so I can buy new tools is a trade-off I'm willing to accept. So what this comes down to is you got to figure out what your cost is, what your needs are, how much money you need to make in order to make this a viable business. And then on top of that, even if you can pump out, say, okay, I'm going to make knives for 8 hours a day, I'm going to streamline my process, because one thing that I don't do that streamline, I make like 1 to 2 knives a month. So when I start a project, I set up my cutoff wheel section with hand grinder. I go outside, I cut out that one knife, and then I bring it back in and I deburr on the belt grinder, and then I go to file work and I finish out the profile on the file. Now, if I was making, say, 10 knives at a time, would I be able to speed up that process? Definitely I could shave off some time. How much time? I don't know. I've never done it before. I've never done a high volume knife make. It's not something I'm really into. So back to the original point, you got to figure out what's viable for you. And then on top of that, once you say, okay, I can make knives 8 hours a day, I'm going to get $20 an hour for it. Okay, cool. Can you sell all those knives? Because that's another key point. I don't have the time. This is, like I said, this is my weekend gig, my weekend hobby. I'm just in here for fun. Could you get the demand to meet your productivity levels? I couldn't, personally. Even if I was making knives 8 hours a day, I was putting out like 1.5 knives a day. I don't have the customer base to sell that at all. So, I thought this might be a fun video to kind of talk through this. I find this fascinating, kind of the financial aspects behind the hobby, the business. Is this a viable business? You know, in my opinion, for me, I would never ever want to make this a business. And why is that? Because as soon as I have to start worrying about overhead, I have to start worrying about demand and having to sell it in order to provide for my family, it's going to turn into a huge stressor for me. And then when there's stress involved in making the knives, it's not fun anymore. It's not something I'd want to do. Ever. No, I'd rather work, I don't know. Would I rather work in an office for $20 an hour? If it were steady income with benefits? I don't know if I'd want to, but I would, just to support the family, as opposed to trying and being here and trying to hammer out that many knives. It wouldn't make it fun. And it'd be hard work. It would be. It'd be anyway, not for me. For you, this is highly personal. You gotta decide what's good for you, where you're at in your life. Not something I'd want to do. Try and make this into a full-time business. No. As a hobby, it's awesome. Highly recommended. Highly recommended. As a business, no, not for me. Not for me. People do it. People do it, and people make a lot of money doing it. So the possibility is out there. You know, they're famous YouTubers. It's very likely that you can be a famous YouTuber, make a bunch of money doing YouTube. Unlikely. Unlikely. It's possible, but unlikely. Anyways, thought that might be a fun topic to talk about. Kind of make an interesting video. Take care, guys. Thanks for watching.